Namaste. Welcome. We are filming live from Koh Yao Noi. I'm here with David, the owner of Island Yoga, for today's Dharma Dialogues. And today we're having a very interesting conversation about the relationship between science and mysticism. You called it modern yoga.
Modern yoga.
Modern yoga. I'm curious, I mean, just to start, and I know you had said maybe instead of science and mysticism, we're talking about science versus mysticism. How do you see from a high level perspective, what is that relationship?
Well, in the old days, when you went into a mystical study, you had to take the guru's word for everything, you know. And in the very old days, you stayed with one guru all your life. If you went to India, you found the guru, you stayed with that guru. He taught you all of the tricks of mysticism, and you had to take it on faith. There was no science, and you had to do the practices, and maybe 20 years later, you know, you came out the other end with like, aha, I can meditate now, I kind of understand what he's talking about. In this day and age, you can watch YouTube videos of people like Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton, and they scientifically describe all of that mysticism. They show scientifically proven, you know, reproductive or reprovable constantly. They prove what the mystics have been saying. That's never happened before. When I was growing up, you had to take it on faith. Now you look at it and they understand the science of Kundalini, they understand, or the mysticism of Kundalini is explained in science. That's an amazing phenomenon. How the Kundalini experience, or the awakening Kundalini experience, is completely proven through biology, chemistry, neurology. It's all there.
You were saying they can even measure which chemicals are causing samadhi. They can, you know, with these brain scans, with modern technology, these things that we used to talk about. I mean, even in the Yoga Sutras, like going back thousands of years, suddenly they're saying, actually, that's real, and here are the chemicals, here are the things that are happening.
Yeah.
I mean,
they would talk about the pineal gland.
Right.
As a good example, you know, and people would say, it's the releasing of the DMT in the pineal gland, you know, but there's never been, up until now, they've never had the science to prove that that was actually happening. Well, they knew that, but they didn't know the chain reaction that occurred. Now, through studying Kundalini, and especially through Joe Dispenza, they're watching the whole chain reaction of deep breathing, Kundalini breathing, and then the energy rising up the spine, and at different levels of the spine is having hormonal charges occur. And these chemical charges, and these are biological chemical charges that are actually taking place, they're causing chain reactions all through the spine until it hits the brain, and then it goes to the brain in a whole sequence of events. And if you're lucky, at the end of it, it gets to the pineal gland, and there's 3 parts within that. The crystals are awakened, there's 3 chemical reactions happening there, and finally the DMT is released, and you go into nirvana, samadhi, bliss. Now in the old days, the mystic will say, well, just do the Kundalini like I showed you, and maybe you'll get into bliss.
Right.
Now you've got a YouTube video of like 10 minutes showing the whole biochemical, physiological occurrence.
It's incredible.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's interesting.
So to me, just to make it practical, it gives us the proof that this stuff actually works. And when they get into that state, again, you go back to Joe Dispenza and neurology, they've got lifetime video, people wired up, and they're guiding them in meditation, guiding them through the Kundalini experience, and they're watching their microvoltages in their brain, which is normally 10 to 60 microvolts in a normal brain synapse connection, go up to 3 million volts, 3 million microvolts, and they go into gamma brainwave oscillation, and they go into samadhi and bliss. They thought they were having an epileptic fit the first time they did it, and just to wake the people up, I'm sorry. And they were like, why did you wake me up? I've just been talking with God. You know, they've been awakened. And they're like, wow. And this is all reprovable science now. So this is phenomenal stuff, and this is discoveries being made every week now. So for yogis, yoga teachers, and people that are trying to get people onto the path of higher consciousness, awakening, this is invaluable stuff. I mean, to me, it's such a quickening of your spiritual evolution. Now you can really, you can go to yoga retreats, you can do the study on YouTube and read Joe Dispenza's books and Bruce Lipton's books and these great teachers, and understand it scientifically. And and I think for young people and older people, it's always been that, but I'm not sure, nobody can prove that, it's just your word for it. That's what I always heard when I was growing up, and there was no science. Now you go, we can prove everything. It's all provable, all the way through to the mystical experience. You can't argue it anymore. You cannot argue. It's all science now. So for me, that opens the door to so many more people. It makes mysticism and yoga and the spiritual journey completely accessible. Because most educated people, smart people, they want some degree of proof. They're like, well, if you can show me, if you can prove to me that this stuff actually works, I'll join your gang. I'll come on the program. I'll join the retreat. And now you go, well, just watch a couple of these videos, and then I'll show you where to sign, because this is all pure science now. That's the difference. Could never do that before.
I remember when I did my yoga teacher training, the first time we were doing just a wide leg forward fold with a flat back. And we were in it for a while, and the teacher said, and I remember I was experiencing a lot of anger was coming up for me, and I'm just sitting there in this pose like, why am I getting so angry right now? And suddenly the teacher says, you might be experiencing some anger right now. If that's the case, it's because you have really tight psoas muscles, and by stretching those, you're allowing your pelvic floor to relax, which is taking you out of fight or flight mode. And I think it's so interesting because obviously there's also a spiritual explanation for yoga, but seeing that scientific explanation, that medical or that anatomical explanation come in as well, completely shifted my perspective of the practice.
It's a biological explanation, the biology.
And I think for you as well, doing Tai Chi, doing energy work, like what is your relationship in your practice between the spiritual side of it and this new scientific side of it?
I would say, again, with Tai Chi, these days, in the old Tai Chi and in the old yoga, prana, chi, you said, well, I'm building a powerful energy field. Now they don't say that so much. They say we're building a very powerful biomagnetic field. It's biomagnetic, it's biological, it comes from the human body's generation of heat, and it's magnetic. It's a magnetic force. It's an electrical force. So we say electromagnetic or biomagnetic, and that's what's going on. We are a walking, talking biomagnetic field.
Right.
And all Taoists, Tai Chi practitioners, yogis have already known that, but we just say, well, that's your energy. That's all they could ever say. That's your prana. Or that's your chi. Now they're saying this is the biomagnetic field, and it's measurable. And they measure the heart, once the heart's open, and this comes to mysticism and the chakras, When you're in the 3 lower chakras, your energy level is contained in survival mode. And, a lot of the time in the city you live in, they have to be that way. There's nothing wrong with it. But as soon as you move your energy, your biomagnetic field, up to the heart level, massive changes occur, and they measure it. They can measure this now, and they can show that the biomagnetic field can spread out up to 3 meters across, just from the heart. And they can measure the brain goes about 1 meter across. And they say the brain's energy would be more pure electrical, and the heart's would be magnetic. And again, this is pure mysticism now. If you want to intend something, if you want to manifest something, which is very high yoga, and this is pure mysticism because they can't prove this, but this then you have to have a powerful heart opening, an emotive, you have to raise the emotions, and you have to have a powerful visualization and a clear intention from the brain, from all the neurological connections, and you put those two together and you project that out into the universe, and it connects with a similar vibration in the unified field. And it's that unified field, once it's acknowledged it will send you back a corresponding signal, which is an opportunity, which is what we've been asking for. They can't prove that yet.
I mean,
maybe that's a good thing, but that's where we've gone. They can measure the electrical charges and the biomagnetic charges, and we've always said in yoga, the power of intention is to get the heart and the brain in coherence. Now they can measure coherence. They measure the coherence of the heart. They measure the coherence of the brain just through. They're wired up to brain scans, so they're seeing if a brain is incoherent or not. And once it gets into coherence, it can take the heart into coherence, or the heart can take the brain. And once the two of them are into coherence, then the whole of the biology gets into coherence, and you get into a super energized state. And that's all measurable. And then you're primed to go either into an ecstatic state, or you're primed to go into an intentional manifestation state. So again, provable.
I mean, I think about the fact that, thousands of years ago they were talking about energy as a spiritual term, and suddenly early 20th century of Einstein coming out and saying, actually everything is energy, which completely shifted scientific study of energy. And even now we look at energy as this still a really mystical thing in so many ways, especially when it comes to healing. But when you said about putting energy out there to manifest, the first thing that came to mind is I was reading recently that they're learning, I think decades ago they learned, but they're learning more and more that trees can communicate with each other. That if one tree is getting attacked by a certain pest or a certain something, it can send out, I don't know if it's a smell or a hormone or what it is that they send out, but they actually alert the other trees surrounding it. And I have to wonder if the energy that we're putting out there, if one day that will actually be measurable, that whatever it is that we're emoting to manifest, I can't imagine it's that far-fetched, this idea that they should be able to measure that at some point.
Well, we're talking here of entering into the intelligent universe.
Right.
Because everything emits energy, and all energy has an intelligence to it. And it's whether you can interpret or decipher that energy. Now, you might have a hard time having a conversation with an oak tree. Right. He's having a great energy day down there in the forest, and you can feel really cool energy. But to try and get on the same wavelength as him is another thing. But fellow human beings, animals, for sure, of course, So that at that level, you've got it, and they've done a lot of tests that show that people can at distance heal, at distance communicate, and that's replicable. They can do that each time. But for me, it's high energy and low energy. Has that person got good energy, bad energy, bad vibes? And that used to be an old, oh, don't go near them, or don't go near that place. It's got low energy. It's got dark energy. Oh, come over here. This has got light energy. Come into this temple, this church, this mystic. Now they can measure that, and they can show you how to generate it. Through the practice of yoga, you generate. That's the general thing, but it's not just the practice of yoga. We generate energy first and foremost through the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe. We're machines. We're biomechanical machines. So, and we know this. We don't have to prove it. You don't get that good an energy living at a 7-Eleven all the time. If you go to the health food store and you eat good organic food, and you rest well, and you have healthy relationships, and you have a meaningful purpose to your life, a career, and you live in a good environment, then you're gonna create really good energy. And conversely, if you don't take care of those bases, then your energy field and your energy pattern is going to go down. So that's always been understood and accepted. The difference now, and this is what we said, science versus mysticism, or science and mysticism, is we measure all of those things. Somebody's in the city and they measure their energetic imprints and they're going, you're not doing so well. You need to maybe move to the country or the seaside, You're in a relationship, and the healers and the scientists are going, that's probably not working for you anymore. So part of it is psychology, advanced psychology, but it still comes back down to the energy field and reading that energy field. I think the thing that they can't do yet, I'll be very surprised if they can, is the ultimate is to connect to what we call the unified field of all intelligence. That's where you manifest things, that's where you go in meditation to find out who you really are, what your purpose in life is, how you can serve. All of the mysticism and all of the intelligence lies in that unified field. And you're a part of that unified field, but you have to disengage from the chattering monkey mind, the 60 to 70,000 thoughts we think, which is why we do yoga, to get to meditation, to allow us access to that field, you know. So in Joe Dispenza's workshops, they show people stilling their mind to complete silence. They go from beta to alpha to theta to delta, and then suddenly, boom, they go into a very high oscillation and a massive amount of microvolts, 3 to 4 million microvolts in their brain, and they go into a gamma state and they're connected. And they are so connected. You know, they come back, they don't want to come back. It's the highest of the high. The mystics would always call it samadhi, bliss, nirvana, oneness, connectedness, you know. So they can not only guide people into those states just by looking at the brain scan, by looking at the neurological lifetime video of somebody wired up. They can take them into stress by their guiding. They can take them into samadhi, ecstasy. Not everybody, but good students, they can do it. And then they teach those people how to replicate that. They teach them how to do it consistently over and over again. And that's a very, very quick road. That's a huge quickening in the spiritual journey that's never been open to us before. So it's demystified everything. You know, some people are like, oh, there's no mysticism anymore. And I'm like, no, it's really good. Mysticism is always this vague thing that you're like, oh, I'm going into the mystic now, which is still a journey into the unknown for sure. You've got to be in the now, and you've got to get into oneness in order to collect the goods from the unified field. But when you can have it explained to you scientifically, and when you can go to advanced yoga retreats where they can teach you these studies, and you can get into these deep states of meditation very quickly, that saves you years and years and years of study, really, years and years of searching. So for me, I applaud it all. Really good.
And you were saying there were 3 main scientific fields of study that are really advancing this. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, to me, I mean, this is just my take on it, but as I've watched this evolve over the last 20 years, and I really believe that Bruce Lipton was the first person to really make a really huge change, you know, a paradigm shift in the way we think about this. So for me, it's the last 20 years. It's the study of neurology, of biology, and of advanced psychology. It's those 3. And when I say biology, it's the chemistry, you know, and it's the physics, you know, so it's those 3 together. It's biology, physics, and chemistry. But I say biology because what they're really looking at is the changes in the human body. When the mind makes a change, that's the psychology, you know. But what they're doing is they're looking inside your brain, because, and you've got to understand this as well. Maybe we'll preempt it with this. The mind is created by consciousness coursing through the neural pathways or the neural networks of the brain. So they look at the brain neurology, lifetime. And they understand that when you stop the chattering monkey mind and you get to a silent mind, pure consciousness, and then you allow that consciousness to enter into the neural pathways of the brain, you create mind, but you create clear mind with a high level of consciousness. And that clear mind, once it's established itself with the brain and the heart, and you've got coherence between the two, you've got harmony between the two, the biology, the quality of the biology goes so high so quickly. You're having upgrades in your gene level, you know, which is the building blocks of life, you know. So people used to think, oh, if you're born with bad genes, that's just bad luck, that's just the way it goes. You can change your destiny genetically, DNA, by doing yoga. And they're proving that now. They're showing that if you think clearly and you keep fear away and you stay in the present moment, and you feel connected, then biologically you're having upgrades. And conversely, the other side of it, and this is what millions of people around the world, especially now, are suffering from, At the other level, when you're not connected and you don't have coherence and you're in lower energy patterns, then neurologically you're in confusion and you're having biological downgrades. You're having toxic releases into your body constantly. And those toxic releases, once those toxic releases start to be consistent over weeks and months and years, they start to affect the biology in a catastrophic way. It's toxic biology which leads to disease, to heart disease, to cancers, and neurogenital disorders. All kinds of catastrophic diseases come from the downgrade in biology, which is the thinking, So they said 95% of people create their own diseases by dysfunctional thinking. 5% of the people, and this is science again, 5% of the people in the world are born with defective genes. 5%. So, and you can't change that very easily. That's the 5%, and they're going to have problems in this lifetime because they've got defective genes. 95% of us are born with good genes, and we devalue and we toxify them through the way that we think, unconsciously most of the time. It's the unconscious mind thinking and creating stress, and that stress is creating toxic biology, and the toxic biology is down-regulating the gene. And so Joe Dispenza and all the great researchers now are saying, well, we could just go the other way as well, can't we? We can go and create high levels of coherence, high levels of a yoga kind of calm, and once you enter into that and you persevere with that, then you start to create beneficial biology. You get an upregulation of the gene. And that's what the yogis have always told us. Now it's science.
I mean, I think something that always was interesting to me when I studied psychology was this idea of predictive behavior, right? This idea that if they can look at every factor of your environment and your parents and your home and how you're raised, they can more or less guess what your decision making is going to be and what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And it sounds like what you're saying is that the opposite of that is that if scientists can actually control your environment, or if you can control your environment through yoga or through these practices, that can actually change your dharma, change your path in a sense.
Absolutely. To me, that's one of the most fascinating discoveries of the last 20 years. And I believe that if we didn't discover it, then Bruce Lipton made it popular, and it's the science and the understanding of epigenetics. And epigenetics is reading our environment and understanding that we are a product of our environment. How we read our environment, and this is really key to understand, it's not the environment, it's how we perceive the environment affects us biologically. But it's the way that our mind is set up, reading the environment, and that could be somebody in the environment talking to you because they're part of the environment. It could be a pure environmental awareness of a wave or snow or storm or something like that. It can be a snake, it can be anything, it can be a dog, but we're products of our environment. And the way that we read our environment and how it affects us biologically, and psychologically, which is the end game really, the state of our body and the state of our mind, because the state of our body and the state of our mind determines the state of our soul, our consciousness. So when you understand that, then you've opened up such a big arena to understand what's really going on. And they used to say, your personality, your personal reality creates your personality, and that means your environment creates who you are. But also it's proven completely the same the other way round. Your personality can create your personal reality. How you think starts to create what you pull in from the environment. So it's both ways. So you are a product of your environment. But in the higher level yoga, the requirement is to go beyond, to become greater than the experiences of your environment. If you can't become greater than the experience of your environment, then you're going to be a victim of your environment. And that's what most people are. Most people are victims of their environment. They're stuck in the city, or they're stuck in some situation with people, part of the environment, with a country or with a setting, and they can't do anything about it. But once you go into yoga and you go within and you become greater, in other words, you transcend your environmental awareness, which is it's only the environment out there. And once your inner reality becomes more powerful than the outer environment, then you take control. And we're proving that. And that's yoga. I mean, that's yoga at the highest level. You go within and you disconnect from the environment. You take away the senses. You're not looking at what's going on out there. You're not listening to Donald Trump, all these crazy people, So you've disconnected and you've gone without, so the environment has no impact on you at all, You take stock of who you are through meditation and the yoga practices. You go on retreat and it's sensory deprivation almost, But you're building a very powerful energetic field around you that's impervious to the environment. You're not becoming a product of your environment anymore. You're mastering your environment by mastering your mind. And when you've got to that state, and that's not so hard to do, Joe Dispenza's doing it, people, on a 5-day retreat, then you come back out and you see clearly. You've got a mind that's still and powerful with good perceptions, and then when the environment comes back to you again, you go, aha, I can see what's going on and it's okay. I can choose to accept it, or I can choose to change it, or change myself in it, or change aspects of the environment, but I'm not going to be a victim of it anymore. That's huge. I mean, that's so huge in everybody's life. But first you've got to be aware of it. Most people are not aware that they're victims of their environment, or they're products of their environment. And that's, when we think about yoga and spirituality, it's always going on retreat and getting away from all of that stuff first. Sure, we like to go into nature, but it's a conducive environment. We're looking for a holistic environment, a nurturing environment to do our yoga in. But if you don't live in that, then you've got to transcend it. You've got to become greater than the circumstances in your environment as well, not just the environment. So all of this is provable now. This is what we're talking about today, is that these scientists are showing through advanced psychology and through the biology and through the neurology that you can transcend all of these things. And if you don't transcend them, they're going to poison you. It's going to be toxic and they're going to devalue your life. So we've got choices now. We've got very clear choices. We can either take the path of yoga or the path of consciousness, the path of awakening, and you learn this stuff very quickly. It's not rocket science anymore. You really can. If I can understand it, anybody can understand it. And I look at these videos and I really take it in deeply, and I understand it, and then I practice it, and I see the results, and you see the results of millions of people around the world now that are doing that, and it's a quickening for the human evolution, really.
I think, it's such a privilege to be able to go to a yoga retreat. It's such a privilege for a lot of people to be able to leave their environment, because so many people have to work all the time, or have families, or have situations that they can't escape physically. Yeah. What are things that people can do from home to then raise their energy or switch that mentality, or what is that process like for so many people who, for whatever reason, situation, they can't move out of those lower 3 chakras?
I would say the very first thing is go to YouTube and start studying Joe Dispenza. Really, I would. I mean, I say nearly all my yoga classes now, I tell my students, everything that I've said and everything that I'm really following now is based around what Joe Dispenza is discovering, because this is the latest scientific research. And when they do look at it, they're going, wow, this is incredible. And the guy is incredible, and he's at the cutting edge of all. So I would say you've got lots of time in the privacy of your own apartment home, with Wi-Fi, to go and look at these videos, and look at 1 or 2 every day and make notes and look at it. I mean, sometimes some of these videos, I have to look at them 3 and 4 times to really understand the science. And he's explaining it in a very easy way with great graphics and diagrams and explanations. But you look at it and you look at it and you understand it and you go, aha, I see what's going on, I get it. But you don't have to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a healer or, some advanced nutritionist or any of that anymore. You can do, but you listen to those people talk and it's all woven in there. They've got all of this stuff, and these guys have spent their whole lives coming to this point, that they can sit there and in a 15-minute video give you this goal. hasn't come to them in 15. You know, you listen to Joe Dispenza, who's like, it's taken my whole life to get here, you know, and he is a neurologist and a biologist and a chiropractor, you know, and he's healed himself miraculously, and now he's changing the lives of millions of people. So these people haven't had it easy. It wasn't, you know, it's a gift to us, it wasn't a gift to them. But if you listen and you understand and study them, it will change your life. And then of course you've got to do the work, you know. And the work for me at home is make sure that you get a good diet and that you do the practices every day and you cultivate good relationships. You know, whoever you're at home with now, make sure that it's a harmonious and nurturing relationship, because it will lower your energy. If you've got one thing that's out of balance in there, then it's going to sabotage nearly the whole work. So make sure that you're resting well, you're sleeping well, that you're doing all the exercises, you're doing the practices, and you're doing the studying. And you're practicing what you preach. You're actually creating a oneness around you, creating a silent mind, and you're coming from a compassionate heart. You know, I mean, that's a lot to ask, but if you're not doing anything else, then what more could you ask for?
Right.
That's what we should be doing.
You know, when you were talking about epigenetics, I was thinking about, in my travels, something I've realized is that a lot of the things that I was trained to dislike or to scare me or whatever negative connotation I had with it, I found in other cultures it was a really positive thing. Like I look at, when I was in Nepal, I got really bad food poisoning. I was on a meditation retreat, and the monk leading the retreat was like, this is such an amazing thing, because it means that your body's burning all of your bad karma away and you're about to go on an epic adventure. And that was actually the beginning of my 2 years of travel. And, you know, I think about in Italy, they celebrate if a bird poops on your head, it's good luck. Like, some cultures celebrate death. Like, I think it's really interesting how we're trained to think this is good, this is bad, but actually so much of that really does come from our environment.
It's conditioning.
Yeah.
It's cultural conditioning. Yeah. I would even say that the mystic says this is good having food poisoning. It's not good having food poisoning.
Right, no, it was painful, it was terrible.
Yeah, it is what it is,
right.
You know, and it's how you make the best of it, isn't it? It's the way you perceive it. And if you've been culturally conditioned to believe that, then that can take some unraveling. But again, if you listen to any of the Joe Dispenza lectures about the conditioned mind, then you'll understand that we're all conditioned in that way. And for me personally, here's a great example of old mysticism and modern science. In modern science, they're saying we're 95% conditioned. You know, we're unconscious 95% of the time, and all of our behaviors are habitual. They're conditioned, right? What's the word for that in the old speak? Samskaras. We would always say, oh, you have all these samskaras. And you're like, what's a samskara? A samskara is a conditioned behavior because of an experience you've had. You've had an experience in your earlier life, and it's usually tainted you in some way, you know, and it's made you behave in a slightly different way than what's optimum, what's really holistic and perfect for you. And you have a few of those, and you can get right out of balance. And that's your samskaras, you know. Modern science comes along and goes, those are your unconscious behaviors. You know, it's the same thing. And then they show you how to dissolve those unconscious behaviors. And again, the first person Deepak Chopra was the first person to do this maybe 40, 50 years ago when he came from India, you know, as a young doctor, and he brought TM to the West, you know, and then he created his own brand of meditation. But he didn't have the science. He knew what was going on, but he did not have the science, you know. 20 years ago, Bruce Lipton discovered epigenetics, and we're the products of our environment. And then he started to tell us all about conditioned behavior. And Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza took up on that. And through many, many connections they've made with psychologists and neurologists and physicists, you know, now they really understand that we are 95% programmed. If we're a regular human being in the West, generally speaking, we're 5% awake here and now and determining through free will where we're going and what we're doing. And 95% of it is a program. Now, a large part of it has to be a program. Driving a car is a program. Speaking English is a program. Walking is a program. you know. So you need those programs, but there's a lot of programs in there, hidden programs that occurred to us earlier in our lives that don't serve us anymore. And that's what we call our negative samskaras, or the samskaras that don't serve us. And they, in the old days, again, they would say, well, you need to meditate, and in meditation it will release the old samskaras. They'll come to the surface and they'll dissipate, and you'll see them for what they are in the meditation. That's true. That's completely true. But when you look at the Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza and the other great scientists now, they're showing you advanced psychological ways of doing that as well.
Right.
And there is no shortcut to meditation. You've still got to do the meditations at the end of the day. But you understand the science of what's going on in that deep, dark, unconscious mind, and how it keeps tripping you up and how it keeps sabotaging you. And it's not some mystic now going, well, it's just your samskaras, you've got to get rid of them. You know, they're like, this is how you do it. Clean your mind, you know? So for me, I'm like, wow, that's what we're doing in yoga classes. We're trying to get people to first wake up physically and then wake up psychologically, you know, wake up, not 5% conscious, but 10, 20, 50. I mean, enlightenment is 100% conscious. You're just fully awake and aware of who you are and what you're going, and there's no hidden agendas going on inside, you know? You're fully awake. We're not asking everybody to become enlightened, but all of us can be a lot more conscious, you know? And if you're 20% conscious, you're doing a huge amount of free will work. You're creating your own destiny. You're becoming the architect of your destiny. You're not a victim of latent hidden programs that may have occurred in you at 3 or 5 or 7 years of age, which is still tripping you up. I mean, it's no fun when you're 40 or 50 and you're still getting sabotaged by those unconscious. And a lot of people, and this is maybe a kind of sad part of it, a lot of people are addicted to the drama of the old emotions. You know, they're very addicted because initially they create huge surges of energy. And to some people, some energy is better than no energy, even if it's a toxic energy, like a drug. You know, you can take a drug and it gives you a big high and you feel wonderful, and then you've got down after it. It's the same with these old programs. People have these huge dramas and emotions, and they go off all crazy all over the place, and they feel very alive, but it's chaos after. Right. You know, complete chaos, and you're like, wow, what did I just do? You know, I've just like destroyed all my relationships and I feel terrible about it now. And then you have remorse and you go even further back. So all of that is uncovered in the modern science. The modern science of yoga is understanding all of that. So it's not that we're not going to do it anymore, it's that there's no excuse for doing it anymore. You can't get away with it. You cannot say now, well, I didn't know.
Right.
It's on YouTube. You know, Joe Dispenza is going every day, this is what you're doing, don't do it.
Right.
Don't have so many dramas. You know, the drama leads to trauma. You know, it doesn't work. So you have to go beyond the drama, and going beyond the drama is going to a silent mind, taking clear perspective, disengaging from the environment, making smart choices, and then coming back into the environment with clear intentions and bringing things into you that do work.
Right.
And there's no programs at work there. This is you in the present moment with a clear mind and an elevated emotion, not toxic emotion, not a drama emotion, elevated emotion and a clear mind, putting energetic imprints, intelligence into the unified field of all knowing and waiting for it to return to you, manifesting. That's a yogi at work, and we're all capable of doing that. And we've got the knowledge and we've got the science now. That's why it's so amazing. That's why I think today's talk has excited me more than most of the others, because the
others are still very good.
The others are very good. This is the stuff that changes you. Yeah. This is the stuff, when you can watch some of those videos and you can experiment with it and you can see the changes that occur, and you can watch thousands and millions of people that are being transformed by this, it's undeniable. And when it's that powerful and it's that out there in the world, you can't go, wow, you know, they've got to prove it to me. That's what they always do. The negative people always say, well, you know, if you prove it, then I'll do it.
Right.
The proof is all there.
Right.
You know? And even maybe taking it one stage further, in a lot of the workshops they're doing now, they're having spontaneous remissions from catastrophic diseases, stage 4 cancers and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. They're going in, and day 1, day 5, it's all disappeared. And they're like, what happened? And they're like, I changed my mind. Literally, you change your mind, you change your biology. The disease is in the old me. The old me is over there. It's no longer me. So that disease has stayed in the old me, in the old energy imprint. It's not registered in the new energy imprint over here, which is the current now me, and that's what these people are learning to do. And people like Joe Dispenza are learning how to coach people to let go of the old me with all those crazy samskaras, all those conditioned behaviors, and all the toxic biology that's in it, all the disease that's in the old me, and they move into a new me with a new mind and a new body, a new energy, in 5 days.
Oh.
And they walk away from stage 4 cancers and Parkinson's disease and MS and things like that. And they're doing it more and more and more, and they're getting so excited, and doctors and physicians around the world are looking at this and going, wow, that's incredible stuff. We can't do that with the pharmaceutical industry or with regular healers even, So and yoga teachers are watching it. This is massive transformation, and it's being shown by a few gifted people around the world, gifted to us now. And I think, again, if we're a captive audience right now, if we're still at home and we've only got, our YouTubes and our videos, this is the stuff we should be studying. I mean, really, this is the stuff. You look and study it in the morning. For me, if I want to look at this, I do my practice, I have a little breakfast, and I sit down all on my own, and I watch 20 minutes to half an hour, and I have a notebook. And I write down, and I stop and I start, and I stop and I start. I might watch the whole thing, or I might go back again, and I'm like, key words will come out and key phrases, and I'll be going, wow, that's an important phrase. I really need to remember that, and I'll write it down. And at the end of a 20-minute video, I filled 2 pages full of really important notes, which I read again. So that's how and we've got time for this now, and this really will transform you. This will elevate you. This will accelerate your journey. This will be transformational.
I mean, I feel like what I'm learning, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that in life, the quote unquote bad things will still happen, and pain will still happen, and death will still happen. All of these things are still part of the experience of being alive. I think what this work is doing in a way is shifting. Maybe it's our perception, or maybe it's our reaction, or maybe it's our experience of those things. Going back to what I was saying about food poisoning, it was terrible and it was painful, and it's something I couldn't eat solid food for a month. But what the monk did for me was made me question, because I never would have imagined something good would have come out of this. And I think about, part of why I'm here is because my father died in an accident. And obviously I didn't want my father to die. Obviously I'd bring him back if I could, but I also can recognize now how much I've transformed out of this experience, and that something incredible is going to come out of this. And I think about especially what's happening in America right now and around the world, with George Floyd, with Donald Trump, with these riots, and thinking about, obviously it's terrible that these things are happening, but there's this possibility that we're actually moving into a better future because
the monk would say it's perfect that these things are happening.
Right, we're burning our bad karma. So
yeah.
It's interesting. It's not necessarily about, I think for the majority of us on the normal plane of reality, it's not about I can change the world physically, I can change the events that happen to me in a tangible way, but I do have a choice about my experience of them and how I react.
Yeah. It's choices, it's free will, you're right. And I actually disagree when you said, the bad things will all still happen. One, it's your perception of bad and good.
Right.
And when you get to an elevated state of consciousness, there is no judgment. It just is.
Right.
And the chances are, when you get also to an elevated state of consciousness and a high oscillation, the bad things can't find you, because the bad things usually happen at a lower level of energy. So the more that you elevate your consciousness and you elevate your energetic field, diseases and even bad luck, as it were, can't get in there. You always seem to be connected to a oneness, and you're just in the right place at the right time with the right people, getting the right things done, and you're going, wow, aren't I so lucky? The fact is, you're doing 3 hours of practice every day, making that luck. Of course you're lucky, but you've got to put the work in, and you're riding the wave then. So that's also part of it. But there's another part, and again, you've got to look at the videos, you've got to listen to the scientists. All of these changes occur when you go out of predictable behavior. So if the universe gave you food poisoning, you were not volunteering to be different.
Right.
You know? So the universe volunteered you to be different. You're going to get sick or you're going to get injured. You know, you've got to get out of your habits, because the habitual way just creates more of the same. You get up in the same time, you do the same things, you meet the same people, you say the same things. What's the outcome going to be?
It's the universe kicking you, trying to say.
The outcome is going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
And they're showing through, you know, again, neurology and neuroplasticity, that if you learn new things, you know, you create new synaptic connections. And the guy that won I think it was Kendricks, he won the Nobel Prize for neurology last year, and he said learning one new thing for half an hour every day you can go from 1,300 synaptic connections to 2,600 connections in one session of learning. You can double the amount of brain power in your brain just by learning one new thing. But he said if you don't master that thing, in other words, if you don't visit that skill again consistently, it'll all disappear. So you learn how to start playing a guitar chord and you go, oh, I got it. And you've gone from 1,300 to 2,600. You're a smarter person and you've got more power upstairs, you know? If you don't practice that chord again tomorrow or later on that day, it's all disappeared. All those connections disappear. But once you've mastered it, you've done it 2 and 3 and 4 and 10 times and you've got it. It's logged in all the time. And it's one that you chose. It's not an unconscious, because these unconscious behaviors, they come in and we keep doing them over and over and over again, but they're toxic, they're bad behavior, and we keep doing it, and often we keep doing it for years and years. It can be a lifetime, and that's very powerfully wired in. We're hardwired into bad behavior, and you see that in the jails, and you see it in the inner cities and everything else. But as yogis, we understand, one, we can dissolve those samskaras, and we can also take ourselves out, and I think this is super important, you know. It's like, be here now, but do something different. And when I go to a yoga class, I never go to the same mat in the same position in the sala every day. And it's such an urge. Everybody walks in and they always go to their favourite corner in their same mat, you know, looking in the same way, because they want to have the same experience. You know, they had a good yoga class yesterday and they think if they sat on the same mat, they'll have another good experience, you know. Do it differently. Walk in differently and choose a different mat and give your mat to somebody else, you know, and go out differently and do your whole day and just learn, just get used to, celebrate being in the unknown, because it's in the unknown that you really start to grow. If you want to grow in the unknown, because that's where you're not being predictable. That's where you're creating those new synaptic connections, because you've got to think. You've got to be conscious, because you can't just cruise. You can't be on unconscious mode. You know, just doing the same old things, having the same conversations with the same people in the same way. You're just growing old. You're dying. You know, you're dying. The yogi wants to grow up. The other people they're growing old and growing away. You know, so that there are choices. But this is science. This is pure science. I mean, that's the science again of neurology and psychology.
Right.
Just showing what happens to us when we change our behaviours and we consciously, willfully, with free will change it. Not waiting for an accident or some drama or catastrophe to come along to make our changes. You don't want it that way. That's not the smart way. The smart way is to consciously change ourselves.
Yeah, I want to dig a little bit deeper into the brain. In these scientific studies, I know we're learning more and more how much the brain controls the body and controls our perception of reality. And ultimately, you know, all 5 of our senses come into the brain, our thoughts come into the brain. So really our entire perception of reality comes into the brain. So when you said that these people doing these trainings are able to heal themselves of cancer or heal themselves of Alzheimer's or these things, to me, from that perspective, it makes sense, this idea that our brain controls reality. And I also think about like Ram Dass, who famously went on an acid trip, and his acid trip was released from his ego. And then he ended up leaving his life and went to India and found his guru. And the guru said something to the extent of, you know, it's similar, but it's not the same as samadhi doing acid. But I'm curious, from your perspective, what is the relationship between the brain and reality?
Well, the truth of it is, and I'm glad you said it this way, the brain is just another piece of organic matter.
Right.
It's not the brain. The brain cannot change the brain. Matter cannot change matter. Ego can't change ego. You know? It's consciousness going through the brain that creates mind. And mind creates perception, creates how we look at the world. So that's what you've got to work on. You've got to work on the consciousness going through there. And if that consciousness going through the neural pathways, creating that mind, is not an elevated state of mind, then you've got to change it. And if we're in a darker state of mind, if we wake up and we put consciousness, we're like, okay, time to start thinking, go out of that twilight world of dream state, you know, and go into thinking state, and we awaken and dark thoughts come into our mind. That's toxic, and it's toxic biology, and it will cause damage to the brain. Again, these neurologists show us every time that somebody's energy goes down and they start getting stressed and they see all this confusion going on in the brain because of the way the mind is interpreting things and creating havoc and chaos in there, it's always devaluing the brain. The brain is in a worse state, it's fatigued and it's stressed and it's toxic, and it's causing toxic biology to go into the body, which is down-regulating the genes, which is what we said before. So it's beholden to us to be one, to be aware of that, to be conscious of that, and once we're conscious of it, maybe our mood, our state of mind is going down, to change it straight away. How do we change it? We do some work.
Right.
We do some work. You never ever dwell on it. You never dwell on something dark and depressing. You go, mind is not elevated right now. Let's go and do some breathing. Let's go and don't drink alcohol. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, mind is not elevated. Let's smoke some dope. You know, mind is not elevated. First thing, do some stretching, do some breathing. Do some more stretching, do some breathing. Look at your mind 5 minutes later. It's not the same mind. Look at it 10 minutes later. You're feeling good. You're feeling awakened up. You're elevated state of mind. You're like, what was I worried about? Half an hour later, you're into a yoga practice that you weren't even planning.
Right.
But you started breathing and stretching, and you're like, wow, I feel better and better. And my toxic mind is going away. And your gene pool is dancing away there, going, wow, it's not a toxic rainstorm in here. It's like gold is coming down. We're having a biological uplift just because we changed our mind. So it's not the brain. The brain is an organ in the body, you know, like all the other organs, and it actually doesn't have its own intelligence. You know, I mean, it has its own intelligence in as much as all cells communicate with each other. What makes the brain different from all the other organs is that consciousness goes through the brain to create mind. You know, without consciousness going, you've just got a still brain, you know, an unconscious brain, or a brain that's, you know, been knocked out. But also a brain that's working with unconscious memories going through. It's still not in control, and that's the one that's out of control. But they also say, and this is super interesting to me, where is the unconscious mind? Where does the unconscious mind reside? And again, these scientists are now starting to understand the unconscious mind resides in every cell in our body, not particularly in the brain. The brain is awakened through conscious activity. The unconscious mind is in all the cells of the body. You try and give up coffee and you walk past a coffee shop and everything excites you. All of your like cells in your body start dancing around like, I'm giving up coffee tomorrow. And you're in there getting a triple espresso, you know? And that's a biological urge, you know? And the 5% free will is fighting 95% conditioned behavior that says, I need the caffeine fix again. And it's the cellular body. It's the biological body going, I don't want to detox today. I want some more coffee. That's where the unconscious mind resides, in the cells of the body. That's what you have to change.
I'm curious though, even deeper than that, like, let's say this bottle, like, is it my conscious mind that's saying this is a bottle and I can hold it and it's copper, or is that the truth of the universe, that things are the way that they are? It's both.
I mean, we're going into mysticism now, but
right.
That's an energetic, it's copper.
Right.
Yeah? And it's copper molecules that are whirling about in space, and they're attracted to each other, and they're attracted to each other at a certain level of velocity that creates a solidarity, doesn't it? Dum dum dum, you know? But if you were whirling in space at a higher velocity, you could put your finger right through it, you know? But the fact is we're not, so we can't. We hit it and it's solid. But it's only solid to us. If you were a disincarnate being, you know, you didn't have a body, but you were still pure consciousness, you know, spirit, pure spirit, you could go right through that because you're oscillating at a higher frequency. Oh, I'm just going to go through his bottle now. You know? So it's physics, isn't it? But it's your perception of reality.
Yeah. And I think that leads to my final question is, I'm curious just your opinion or your thoughts. Do you think that all mysticism will eventually be not defined by science, but science will be able to back all of our mystical beliefs? Or do you believe that everything we're learning from science is actually, in a way, created by the divine or has a mystical explanation to it?
I know that everything in science is created by the divine. I know that, and I think it's going to be like that. I think that mysticism is always going to be leading, because consciousness, pure spirit, soul, nature is always leading, and you can't define that. You can't define that. The more you look at it, the more mysterious it gets, and that's how it should be. You need mystery, you need the unknown. If it was all tangible and provable, it would be boring, and we would stop growing. You know. So, and this is what the mystics always say as well. You know, you can't prove the unprovable. You can't elicit the pure truth. It just is. It's an isness, and you need that. And once you get in true connection with the oneness and with the unified field and become whole, you don't have to prove anything, because you know you're in the same place as all of this truth. You know, but our journey is into wholeness. Our journey is into truth. And like I said, when you get there, it's not that there's no more mystery. There's an acceptance of the mystery, you know? And you don't need the science. The science is just something that you applaud and go, wow, it's waking more people up, you know? More people have the advantage now of being able to take this journey in such a faster way than the people that came before, because we've got the science to prove it. But you don't need it all science. There comes a point, like I said, in yoga, there comes a point where you transcend the science and you just become knowing. You become the yogi, you know? And then the science is a blessing that goes behind it. So it's all, I mean, to me it's all wonderful. Maybe the final word from me on this is an exciting time to be alive as a yogi. And I've been a yogi for over 40 years now, and I've never been as excited as I am today about the discoveries that are going on and the potential for the whole planet to wake up because of this science, because of the availability of it. More yoga teachers are coming through, but with a greater level of awareness and consciousness. This is and I find, and I'm not a scientific person at all, but I find it so fascinating and so exciting to see the science coming out. I mean, it's just so great for everybody, so great for humanity. So couldn't be any better.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. You know, for now, this will be our last Dharma Dialogue. The world is reopening. Our team is leaving Koh Noi.
Everybody's going traveling.
That doesn't mean this is goodbye forever. Obviously, that also means that you should hopefully have an opportunity to come here, and we do these in person. We do satsang. Yeah. We have these types of conversations here all the time. So when you're able to come visit us in Koh Noi, and until then, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can watch these Dharma Dialogues at home anytime. And if you subscribe, we'll alert you as we upload new videos. So you can watch out for new asana practices, new breathing exercises, and other talks in the future that we have.
Yeah, mysticism and science.
Mysticism and science. So
Okay.
thank you so much for these past few weeks. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being a great interview.
And we will see you out in the world.
Okay.
Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you. Thank you to the team.
Thank you.
All right.